He who lives only to benefit himself confers on the world a benefit when he dies. Tertullian of Carthage. Black history is church history, in part because of the work of one particular church father, this Tertullian of Carthage. He was an early apologist who defended the faith against the rising tide of heresies that exploded onto the scene for the early church. Following the deaths of the apostles, the church entered a period of transition as its message began to shift from eyewitness accounts to more secondhand written testimony. You can imagine the opportunity that such a transition caused, as many people were grasping for power and position, and in doing so, putting their own spin on the gospel testimony. Tertullian emerges during this period as a bold voice of truth. His writings helped to anchor believers during that time of vulnerability for the church. Born somewhere between 155 and 160 AD, it's fair to say that there's not much known about his origin. Some scholars debate the details of his story, but tradition holds that he was born to a Roman centurion and was actually a lawyer by training, never being officially ordained into priesthood. Nevertheless, his prolific writing actually shapes much of Western Christian tradition. His work is viewed as building a theological shepherd's fence around Christian belief, clearly distinguishing that which belongs inside the faith from that drifts outside of it. He's perhaps best known for his complete distrust of using pagan philosophy to understand a Christian principle, coining this phrase, "What does Athens have to do with Jerusalem?" Tertullian builds on this theological fence in what might be his most notable work, Prescription Against Heretics. In it, he shared his irritation with those who were misusing the words of Jesus, "Seek and you shall find," as a justification for Gnostic pursuits. He argues that such heretics never arrive at a conclusion, but rather they offer vague theories and speculations that drag people into unending controversies. He reaffirms the teaching of Jesus as authoritative, but also includes the eyewitness testimony of the apostles as significant. Now, this is important because it begins to lay the groundwork for the actual canonization of the New Testament. In addition, Tertullian shows his incredible aptitude in his 5-volume masterpiece, Against Marcion, which many people consider to be the very first Bible commentary. In it, he refutes the teaching of this notable heretic that was perceived as a considerable threat to the integrity of the early church. Marcion was this wealthy businessman who held considerable interest in church affairs. He was actually excommunicated from multiple congregations, but of course, he was wealthy. So, that opens doors of opportunity that might otherwise be closed to other people, even in the church. As such, his considerable means allowed him to continue to hold influence over the views of many believers. What's significant about Marcion's heresy is that he taught that the God of the Old Testament and the gospel of Jesus Christ were reflections of two different gods. It was such a difficult task to reconcile the God of judgment of old with this gracious and merciful picture of Jesus. So difficult to do that he concluded that they were separate altogether. In response, Tertullian brilliantly works through an understanding of the Godhead, coining the term Trinitas, which we've come to know as the doctrine of the Trinity. His work helps us to consider one of the many mysteries of Scripture and leaves us in complete awe of the God who exists far beyond our understanding. Now here's the deal, in full disclosure, Tertullian began to drift in the latter years of his life. The fence that he was drawing around the Christian faith, he began to shrink it smaller and smaller with each new iteration. It reached a point where there were only a few people left inside of it. His latter years were spent in a small sect called the Montanist movement, and for that reason, some scholars add him to the very list of heretics that he fought against for so long. Nevertheless, his contributions to the faith remained, and we all owe a considerable debt of gratitude to his work in helping to shape the theology that we understand today.